Hello viewers, reporting for newszimbabwe.com, I am Makanaka Masenyama. South African-based Zimbabwe media lecturer, Professor Wallace Chuma, says local newspapers and radio stations got caught up in the euphoria of the November 2017 coup that toppled President Robert Mugabe to a point of failing to remain objective in their coverage of the military-backed action. Chuma, who teaches at the University of Cape Town, was speaking to newszimbabwe.com on the sidelines of his presentation of a research paper he is still working on. The research focuses on how the Zimbabwean media framed the tense events between 14 and 21 November last year, the period in which the army placed Mugabe under siege and forced him to resign. The so-called Operation Restore Legacy saw Mugabe's long-time aide, Emmerson Mnangagwa, taking over as the country's second executive president since independence. Chuma spoke on the behavior of Zimbabwe's media during the time.
The media seems to have been quite unaware of when this happened, and the journalists that covered the event kind of lacked urgency. They kind of had they sort of parroted or narrated the official narrative that was given by the army. There was a lack of voices that were diverse. So, but also what is interesting to note is that journalists seem to have sort of gotten stuck or sucked up into the prevailing sense of excitement, with the removal of Mugabe. So there was that excitement, and that resulted in a kind of uniform coverage. There wasn't much analysis, but also critical interrogation of the ways in which power was changing hands in the country. So it was like the means, the end justifies the means, or something to that effect, where the removal of Mugabe was sort of the end product that we were looking for, regardless of the ways that the methods that were employed.
The former Daily News journalist further said that social media outpaced mainstream media in breaking news related to the coup. Because of the pressure to keep pace with one of the biggest stories in Zimbabwe's political history, mainstream media found itself basing some of its reports on ghost sources from social media.
Social media tends to have a very sort of fast rate of sort of spreading the news. Legacy media platforms like newspapers and radio and television tended to sort of lag behind. So journalists told us that they relied overwhelmingly on social media platforms to get a sense of what was happening, sort of updates after updates after updates. But we also learned from our study of social media platforms that there are problems with Twitter itself. For example, some of the voices that were discordant, or some of the voices that were interrogating the constitutionality of this event, were shouted down. So you find that social media platforms can be spaces for bullying, cyberbullying. So in other words, some of the voices that were discordant tended then, after being bullied, to sort of withdraw and then only come back later, etc., etc.
Chuma, who has also lectured at Midland State University's media department, dismissed claims the country was in a new dispensation, as often said by ZANU-PF apologists. He said the country was still rooted in the old Mugabe regime, although now under a different leader.
The official dome, in terms of those who control government, etc., consistently talk about the new dispensation, the Second Republic, etc., trying to draw lines between the old dispensation or the old republic and this one. The official version seems to be highlighting the change aspect of this transition. But what is interesting to me 1 year later is that there are increasingly more voices now from journalists and civil society organizations which are interrogating the newness of this so-called new dispensation. So they are beginning to point at significant aspects of continuity. In other words, if you look at Twitter today, some of the people that were celebrating the army when it moved, like your Maheres and stuff from the presentation that Delta gave, they are now beginning to question the transition itself, to say, was that a transition? If so, in whose name was that? Because they are beginning to realize that the old power structures and ways of doing things remain the same.
Mnangagwa has been Mugabe's right-hand man since time immemorial and has struggled to convince critics he is any different from his mentor. Reporting for newszimbabwe.com, I am Makanaka Masenyama. For these and more stories, do visit our website www.newszimbabwe.com and NewsMTV on YouTube.